Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here with us today. My name is Stephanie Gray. I am a constituent services representative for Congressman Auchincloss based out of our Attleboro district office, and I am responsible for the housing portfolio in the office, the casework portfolio. Every day we're hearing more and more about how folks in the Mass 4th District and beyond are facing a shortage of housing stock, rising rent and mortgage costs, and displacement from their homes. And today's forum started as a spark of an idea this summer after HUD New England newest regional administrator, Lana Matias, reached out to Congressman Auchincloss to discuss housing in the Massachusetts 4th. Upon their first introduction, Congressman Auchincloss and Ari Matias determined that a forum to communicate available programs, initiatives, and funding streams for affordable housing production would be a good first step in collaborating with active stakeholders across our district. Our office and HUD have been equal partners in the development of this forum, and we are grateful for their collaboration. And furthermore, today would not be complete without our state and local partners in the second panel this morning. We look forward to them sharing their perspectives on topics relating to building coalitions, uplifting historically marginalized populations, and the successful development of affordable housing here in the district. Most importantly, we're grateful to all of you who are here today to participate in this forum. You do the day-to-day work in our communities, and we are delighted to have the opportunity to come together in person and virtually to engage in this work. We hope that this program illuminates opportunities for you to utilize federal, state, and local funding and resources to develop more affordable housing in your communities in response to this housing crisis. What matters most is what happens after we leave here today, so please take a few moments afterwards. We've built in some time at the end for you to network with one another. And of course, today would not be possible without my boss, who from day one has made addressing the housing crisis a priority for his office. And without further ado, it's my honor to introduce our Congressman Jake Auchincloss.
Truly appreciate you being here. Thank you to Stephanie Gray, who has done a tremendous job working with HUD staff on organizing this. We're doing this, and I'm here because housing is the single biggest challenge in Massachusetts. Full stop. I am all across the 34 cities and towns of the Massachusetts 4th, from Fall River and Taunton and Attleboro through Brookline and Newton. And everywhere I go, I talk to our senior citizens who are panicked. I use that word deliberately, panicked about their ability to stay in their homes or to downsize and to find a place to stay. I go to some of the most cutting edge businesses in the world, med tech, biotech, robotics, offshore wind. I see the incredible things that we are doing in Massachusetts, and I talk to their 28-year-old PhD superstar, and I say, tell me the number one thing that's keeping you in Massachusetts. And they say, the jobs and the kind of work I get to do. And I say, tell me the number one thing that's going to push you out of Massachusetts. Housing, the cost of housing. This is the biggest problem we have in the state right now. And we know that the solution is going to require strong public-private cooperation. And then it's going to require, on the public side, all three levels of government working hand in hand. To that end, I want to recognize our local and state officials who are in the room right now. If you are a local elected official, can you raise your hand for me? That's terrific. Thank you for being here. And I see also our state representatives. See Representative Jim Hawkins, Representative Alan Sylvia, Representative Adam Scanlon, Representative Carol Doherty. Thank you for being here. All terrific partners. The holy trinity to me of federal, state, local cooperation is at the federal level, we need to expand the LIHTC program. We have got to expand the LIHTC program. It's a good program. It works. We got to do more of it. And I'm a co-sponsor of that legislation. We'll continue fighting for that. At the local level, we need more by right zoning for multifamily housing, for mixed-use development, especially near transit. It's just too hard to build and get the permits that you need at the local level. We need more of that by right across the Commonwealth. And at the state level, we need the state government being the intermediary between those two other levels, carrots and sticks, both in terms of funding and in terms of inducing more zoning changes. That's my vision for how those three levels of government can work together. I'm certainly committed to doing my part. I'm confident that our incoming governor, Maura Healey, is committed to doing her part. And I know that my friend and colleague, Juana Matias, is already doing her part and has just come out of the gate sprinting in her new role. So I'm now happy to welcome Juana.
Good morning, everyone. There we go. Thank you, Congressman Auchincloss, for all you do in support of HUD programs, affordable housing in our state, and for your service to our country. Thank you all for being here. I am delighted to join Congressman Auchincloss, our federal, state, local, and nonprofit partners for a timely conversation on how we can work together to meet housing needs across this region. I want to thank my HUD team and Congressman Auchincloss' team for the work and collaboration that went into putting today's forum together. Also, a special thanks to Bristol Community College for hosting us. I am a firm believer that our community colleges are incredible drivers of economic growth, especially in our gateway cities. And of course, a huge and profound thanks to my team members from HUD for being here to talk about your programs, our current footprint in the region, and the ways HUD resources can be leveraged to promote housing production in this region. As you all know, housing in America is less affordable today than at any time in modern history, and our current housing needs have caused the most economically vulnerable to suffer the most. This morning's discussion is a timely opportunity to gather and talk about the affordable housing needs we are all seeing throughout the region. Today, we will hear from federal and state partners about the resources that can be leveraged in your community to meet affordable housing needs and best practices that can be scaled. We know that the most well-intentioned and best conceived policies, as Congressman Auchincloss mentioned, are dependent on local action. That is why it is so important that all partners from the state, city, nonprofits, and private sector gather to hear the different perspectives and discuss how together, through cross-sector partnerships, we can solve our most complex housing problems. Meeting affordable housing needs and ending homelessness across the country is a top priority for President Biden and HUD. We have seen this with ARPA, COC, special vouchers, additional allotment of housing choice vouchers, our recent 202 NOFO, and the funding proposed in fiscal year 23. But our housing issues are about so much more than funding. It is about everyone knowing what is available and pulling together to address this crucial need. We have divided the program into two parts today. The first part will include HUD colleagues who will speak about their programs, then we'll give some time for Q&A. And then the second part will allow us to hear from our incredible state partners and nonprofit partners with additional Q&A time. The PowerPoint presentations that you will be seeing today will be provided to you all after today's event. And now I'd like to introduce my colleagues from HUD. We have Community and Planning Development Director Bob Shemako here to my left. We also have to my far left our Multifamily Housing Director Joe Crisafulli and our Public Housing Director Bob Swiga. I will hand it over to them to introduce themselves and speak about their programs and resources their offices offer to leverage the production and preservation of affordable housing. And I will, start with Bob Shemako. Yes, Stephanie is mentioning to me that it is a little warm in here and we're looking to get cooler air, so bear with us and we'll keep you posted. Bob?
Morning, everybody. Can you hear me without the mic, or do we need the mic? Use the mic. Yeah, mic. Okay. Hello? All right, there we go. I'm not going to use that. I want to first thank Juana and the Congressman for allowing us to speak today, and the Congressman already started, I was just wondering who's in the room, so is there anybody, in addition to the elected officials, that work with the cities that I work directly with? What cities? Attleboro, let's say. Fall River? No? Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm just getting a little sprinkling. I'm going to go and basically give you a light, because I could go into the real weeds about the programs we administer, but I'm going to give you a light section on that, and also who our partners are, what we do and what we're trying to accomplish. It's a very exciting time because, as many of you know, we have a lot of resources. Thanks to Congress, and unfortunately, the effects of the pandemic, we had the CARES Act, which was a lot of funding. We had the American Rescue Plan, and a number of programs existing programs which got additional funding, and many new programs that we got. My background is I worked started out my own business many years ago. I went into local government and then municipal management, ended up in Massachusetts. Once upon a time, I was a downtown manager there. And then over at the Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development, I ran their Community Development Block Grant Program. And believe it or not, shockingly to me, I've been at HUD for 20 years. I've seen a lot of changes, but I want to say that one thing that I'm seeing right now is something that has already been touched upon, which is better partnerships. And I've been out, thank goodness, in the field the last couple months, again, finally, looking at projects and meeting people. So that's a little bit of my background. If we can have the next slide. What we do, our office, we're the grants guys. We provide a number of different funding sources, and they are all grants. Some we call entitlement grants, which are automatically, there's a formula that is provided, and we mostly work with the larger cities and 5 state governments. So I work directly with the state governments, my office, and we have 2 staff members also in the audience. Why don't you guys wave? Mike Casper and Ed Soares, and they're sort of they're part of our staff. So I work with these 5 states. We provide funding directly to the state governments for distribution. Our main partner in Massachusetts is the Massachusetts Office of Community Planning and Development. We also work with the Department of Transitional Assistance and Department of Health, a number of different agencies that we provide funding, both competitive funding as well as, as I mentioned, formula funding, which is automatically provided each year based upon a congressional allocation and a formula that Congress created in the 1970s. So throughout those 5 states, it's basically the same type of allocations that we provide, the same type of programs. And the reason I mention that is because from our perspective, we see best practices, we see things that work, we see things that don't work, and we try to provide that feedback as well as we learn so we can provide better, what we term as technical assistance, but really it's about helping communities and helping states. And as this forum is going to show, it's about increasing the amount of affordable housing and addressing some really pressing issues that we have across the country and certainly across New England, and as we well know, in Massachusetts. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are our programs, and I want to go over them because these are really important resources, and we also work through, as I said, a number of partners. So our allocations are given to us, through Congress, through the administration, and then we work with our different partners. So we have in Massachusetts, we have a number of cities that we work directly to. And when I say directly to, we provide funding, we provide guidance. We are one of the few agencies that actually works directly on the ground. Usually, there's an intermediary, and we do work with, as I said, in Massachusetts, the different state agencies, and they work with communities. But we also work directly with communities. So, for instance, Attleboro is one of our partners. And so our staff, as well as myself, we go out, we meet with them, we provide funding, we talk about projects. In addition, we're talking at the same time with the Commonwealth, right? The state. We're providing funding, providing technical assistance, all sorts of things. So it's a dovetailing approach to working with the various communities. And it's important to know because and one of the things you're going to see with these programs, it can be very confusing. And sometimes, the sad part is that, particularly with a smaller community, they don't know where to start. You might have an affordable housing committee trying to get off the ground. You're working with NIMBYism where there's people against a siting of affordable housing project, and we can point you in the right direction. As I said, we work closely with the state and local governments, but also we work directly. And I think that's a piece that sometimes is lost, where people think like, oh yeah, the federal government's over here, and we're way down here. We many times get inquiries from people that don't deal with us directly, and we can sort of not part the seas, but provide that technical assistance, provide that introduction to people who can be really helpful. And I think that's a key here, which is it's about working together and it's about partnerships. And I know that I push my staff about what we really are trying to achieve, which is community development, improving the lives of the citizens that we serve, particularly low to moderate income persons, because that's our mission. And but for that mission, we're not just processing grant agreements and those kinds of things. It's really the on the ground, the performance, the things that really make a difference. So the Community Development Block Grant Program, we provide that money directly to some cities. As I said, Attleboro, Fall River, they are direct recipients. As an example, Worcester, Boston, the larger cities, generally above 50,000 people, we provide funding directly. And the Community Development Block Grant Program is our flagship program. That is the program that all block grants in the federal government are modeled after. It was the first one. It was created in 1974, and it was really about addressing the needs of low to moderate income individuals. It's an anti-poverty program. We provide money directly, as I said, to those larger cities, but we also provide funding directly to the states. So the Commonwealth of Massachusetts receives an allocation, let's say it's in like about $34 million in a year, and then they distribute it to the smaller communities. So a place like Bellingham, Milford, they would receive funding through the Commonwealth. And that's usually a competitive round with some nuances. Sometimes they have some discretionary. They can provide it through discretionary means, but also it's mostly a competitive basis. The projects that you can undertake with the community development program, and the magic of it is that it is extremely flexible. We can do anything from what we term public services, which are things like a food pantry, English as a second language, after-school daycare. So there's a lot of programs like that, but also a big piece of it, certainly within the Commonwealth, is housing. And the only thing we can't do related to housing, we can't do new construction with that program, but we do a lot, particularly in this region, a lot of housing rehab, where if a person is low to moderate income, they can receive a grant or a loan to provide repairs on your house, on a house. There can be a deed restriction put in to make sure that house remains affordable. As I said, the funding, if in the cities, comes directly through us, or it comes through the Commonwealth in a competitive round. Also, the block grant program provides infrastructure. We can do things in support of affordable housing. So let's say you have a housing development that you're trying to create. It's new construction. We can't pay for the construction, but all the infrastructure up to that, right? We could do the sewer, the water, the septic, those kinds of things in support of that affordable housing. The block grant program is extremely useful. It's extremely sought after because it can do so many things. We can pave roads, we can plant trees with that program. So it's really up to the local government because that's who has to apply for it through the Commonwealth. A local government must apply, but they can apply on behalf of a nonprofit. We do business development also with it. So there's a lot of different uses. The CDBG disaster recovery, and I want to mention that because after there's a disaster, we many times have, obviously rebuilding, and because of changes within our programs as far as what we call our disaster program, it is an offshoot of the CDBG program, and in the HUD budget, it's almost half our budget is unfortunately due to climate change, things like Puerto Rico and the rebuilding after disasters like down in Florida. Congress provides appropriations and we help with the rebuilding. So after FEMA's pretty much done, HUD now takes a very large role But now we have additional requirements that we're working with and incentives in order to make sure that affordable housing is built, that the funds are used, and it's a lot of money, but it's really important to understand that we now have a very, very large role in after disasters as far as rebuilding. The CDBG 108 loan guarantee program, that's very interesting. So a community, if a community receives CDBG money directly, so as I said, let's use Attleboro. If they receive $1 million a year, they can borrow from HUD up to 5 times that amount. So they could borrow $5 million at a good reduced rate. So if the municipality didn't want to bond for a particular kind of project, and the key to this is that the use of that funding is everything that the community development block grant could do. So if you had let's say a mill that, and we've done these, a mill that you would like to convert over to affordable housing, you could use the CDBG money for the rehab of that mill. And the requirement in order to use the money would be the greater than 50% of the units would have to be affordable. So there's a myriad of different uses for that, since it can be used for any sort of activity that the block grant can be used for. We have some really great projects that have taken place over the years. And to just show an example of the types of things that can be used for, the city of Fall River used a 108 about 3 years ago to buy all new fire apparatus with our loan. They had not replaced the fire apparatus, I think it was over 20 years. So they use that money for that purpose. And it's important to just see and to get a sense of the different things and how many areas our programs touch. And I think that that's really a key, and it's shame on us sometimes for not really showing the flexibility of the various programs that we have and what they can do. And it's really, there's gray areas, there's new activities, new eligible types of things that we've done with these programs. So it's an important asset. The loan guarantee program, it's pretty much a no-brainer. So long as you have a project and it meets what's called the national objective, which is helping generally low to moderate income individuals, and there's basically some collateral. The loans, we provide those loans, and we have a number of great successful affordable housing projects throughout New England over the years. Next is the Home Investment Partnerships. That is our flagship program for housing development. The home program is for new construction, could be rehab. There are requirements as far as deed restrictions, depending on the amount of funding that is put in. We are great partners with Mass Housing, the Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development, under the director Kate Racer, who's been there probably as long as I've been longer than I've been over here. We have projects everywhere that basically I can drive in the Commonwealth and see various projects with the home program. You heard the Congressman talk about the low-income tax credits. The home program is seed money. We do not have tons and tons of money. I think it's the highest it's been in a long time. We're over, I think, $1.5 billion as far as nationwide for the home program. But it's a true housing development program. The Commonwealth provides money through DHCD home funding through the one-stop, and I guess you'll hear about that from another speaker. So basically, you can apply directly to the Commonwealth for home projects, and also we have what are called consortiums, which are regional entities where you have a number of cities or towns, cities and towns that band together in a regional entity, and they also receive an allocation. Once they create what we call a consortium, then they receive funding each year automatically. So it's just like I mentioned in the Community Development Block Grant Program, where the funding is provided each year. Home participating jurisdictions, these consortiums of communities can receive bless you, they can receive money automatically each year for projects. And the important thing about these projects and the things I'm talking about and why these are popular and good programs, there is local control. We provide basically an outline. We oversee, we don't really direct. I mean, obviously we're public trust officers, we monitor, we make sure the funding is spent correctly, we provide tons and tons of technical assistance, we try to put parties together. You know, when there's disagreements, we try to negotiate. I do a lot of jawboning, what I call it, which is that getting people to do the right thing and people understand how to do the right thing versus saying, you know, the stick, which is, okay, you're out of compliance. So we really want to work together. And the home program, as I said, is seed money, and yet these projects are defined at the local level. Many people think, you know, geez, affordable housing, you know, public housing, and I think that's obviously it's a mission, right? People to understand, and I think we've come a long way that it's about, you know, police and firefighters being able to live in a town or senior citizens not having to sell your house. And those types of things are so critical about education, and that, you know, that's part of what we do, and that's part of what I, you know, when I come to these things, because it is about education, and these sorts of things, and our programs allow that local control. And we work so closely, as I said, with the state as well as the municipalities. The home program, competitive usually at the local level, but a lot of great different things tied to it. And I'm going to skip to the home ARP program since I'm talking about the program. The American Rescue Plan, huge congressional appropriations. They created a new program. It's part of the home program, but it is for basically homelessness and for creating units and services for extremely low income individuals and those that are homeless. And so this, to me, is a great initiative. It is a great pilot program. It's right now it's sort of a one-offer, and the states and communities are submitting their plans, and we're approving their plans in order to create housing using this funding. And it's for qualifying population. We have definitions of population, and you know, as an example, it would be homeless or you know, people surviving domestic abuse and things like that. So this is really targeted at individuals that really need permanent housing. And so there's a lot of money, and those projects are just starting in the planning stages. The Commonwealth has they have a plan that they submitted with, you know, their intent for the allocations. We have our consortiums, those regional entities that are also submitting you know, these plans. So that's something just to really be aware of. Emergency Solutions Grant Program, that used to be what was called our Emergency Shelter Grant Program. We do things that getting people into housing. The pandemic, we worked with our resources from ESG, thanks to Congress again. They provided about 5 times our usual annual allocation from Congress. We were able to get people sheltered. We could be able to get people into motels, get them off the streets, and we've learned some lessons. I mean, you've seen things that Boston has done with Mass and Cass. We have learned better ways of working with the homeless. We have obviously a huge problem with unsheltered homeless right now because of the housing crisis, and that's why we're in this room. It's about creating units. We have a unit shortage, and the rents are too high. We have, you'll hear from public housing and multifamily, my compatriots here, about, you know, the rents that have to be paid and the amount of money that goes into those units. So, you know, it's supply and demand right now, and it's a crisis. So the Emergency Solutions Grant Program used to be emergency shelter. It's more focused on housing, getting people off the streets. We still provide shelter assistance, but we know that is not the end-all and be-all. We have learned over time about how to end homelessness and the things that are required in order to do that. Housing for Opportunities for Persons with AIDS program, that's a program that continues to be refined because thank God that you know, AIDS is no longer terminal illness, but we provide services as well as housing to individuals that need it, many times formerly homeless individuals, It's a great program and continues to be supported by Congress. The Housing Trust Fund, that is an allocation that goes directly to the state governments. And the state governments, they do not carry out and develop housing themselves. They work, once again, through partners, nonprofits, municipalities. The Housing Trust Fund is targeted for affordable housing production for very low-income individuals. So we see some really great projects, many times tied with those tax credit projects, where it's the production of units. We see big projects, things like, you know, a mill can be redone, or it's new construction. Really, the type of housing that is being produced now with the Housing Trust Fund is really something. This was a result of Congressman Barney Frank working many years. This was put into appropriations language. The law was passed many years ago, and it was tied to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Basically, money would come from that, and finally Congress basically put seed money in and started this program. So they've been receiving allocation for a number of years, but the great thing about it, we're talking big developments that states are putting together and targeting that most vulnerable population of low to moderate income people. Have I talked too much?
No, you're doing great, but maybe we go to the next slide?
Yeah, sorry. You know, my guys, like I said to my office, I said, I'm really kind of nervous because I don't know the group, I said I have my notes, and they said, well, would you come help me with and they said, no, we're just going to let you, because you once you start talking, you can't stop. So, okay, this is really important. These are some of the allocations that we provided to this area. Okay, the congressional district, Attleboro. That's one of our entitlements. Bellingham, interestingly, they do not get money directly from us. That funding mostly is through the Commonwealth. DHCD, my best buddies, where I used to work and run that program. Brookline, you can see 1.2 million. And what this doesn't cover are some of those, are the other ways our money has gone in. And I know I had worked with another former assistant secretary about getting that information out of we're helping Boy Scouts, we're helping Girl Scouts, a lot of these different things that our money is touching, and I think that that's something that we need to do a better job of showing. Fall River, you can see that a substantial amount of funding has been provided, Newton as well as Taunton. So I would say that that you see that the 13 million total CPD funding in the 4th district. I'll actually, being a state guy, over the years, that's actually more than that. And there's some really wonderful projects, and I go around and I look at buildings and I say, that would be a great affordable housing project. Particularly, we've got historic buildings. As I said, I'm always focused on the mills and things like that. So basically, that's it. I think the key to my presentation is that, number one, that you guys know who I am. I'm Bob Shemako. I'm approachable. They have my phone number. You can email me, because I was talking to a friend from Newton, who I'll give you a plug, Can Do, the organization, and I think that many times it's like, okay, what's the question, and can we help you? And I have a friend over at the Attorney General's office, and we work together on a project out in Belchertown, terrible. Manufactured housing program, no potable water. The septic systems were failing, and he called me up and he said, Bob, is there anything you guys can do? And I was like, well, let me call over to DHCD, and I told him the story. And so we had a meeting, right? And so the contact, I talked to the AG, to DHCD, and myself, and it was about that partnership. And now we have the Planning Commission out there, the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, working through, getting the plans. They've started work, but those partnerships and that knowledge and the approachability are what's really important. This is complex. Putting together as a project is really complex, an affordable housing project. There's so many things standing in the way. NIMBYism, home rule, they have good sides and bad sides. But it's about education, working together, and knowing who to call. And I offer up, as I said, my contact information, because look, I'm not going to solve all the problems of the world, but I can refer you to the people that can really help you get that project, figure out how you access funding, and maybe set up a personal connection, which many times saves an immense amount of time trying to get a project across. So I want to thank you all for your time, and I'm sorry I talked too much.
You can stay up here with us, Bob. Thank you so much. As you can tell, I have an incredible team, really passionate, really well-versed. And now, without further ado, I want to introduce Joe Crisafulli. No, I'm introducing Bob Sweeka, who leads our Public and Indian Housing Department at HUD. A ton of experience. Bob, thanks for being here.
Morning. Thank you. Thank you, Juan. Can I use this one instead?
Yeah.
Is this one on? Thank you. So good morning, everybody. Stephanie, thanks for putting this together. Congressman, congratulations on your overwhelming victory last night, I guess. Against unopposed or write-in. You sadly defeated them both. But I am Bob Sweek with the Office of Public and Indian Housing. I represent all the public housing authorities, or the funding for the public housing authorities in Massachusetts, and in fact, 5 of the 6 New England states. We're going to have a couple of slides here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our programs and a little bit of our programs in Massachusetts, and particularly we'll focus in on Massachusetts. So as most of us know, there's 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. This district has 43 cities and towns, or 34, I'm sorry. And some of the bigger cities were kind of highlighted by Bob Shumako. Next slide, please. Our goals in the Office of Public and Indian Housing are fairly straightforward. What I'm not going to do is get into a lot of production, because there's not a lot of production in public housing anymore. Okay, the limits on the building of new public housing across the nation, quite frankly, have been capped. I mean, this has been the case for about 15 or 20 years now. So there's not a lot of new affordable public housing units, but we're going to talk about using vouchers for new housing anyway. So some of our goals: improve the physical condition of our existing public housing stock. Our public housing stock is old, folks. 40, 50, 60 years old, and it's deteriorated over time. So our goal in our office is to provide some capital money for housing authorities to maintain good, affordable housing, decent, safe, and sanitary, and in good repair. We're trying to maintain high occupancy rates in our public housing programs. We're doing very well. You're going to see that demonstrated. We're trying to increase housing choice voucher utilization. Housing choice vouchers, for those folks that are a little uninitiated, is a Section 8 vouchers. It's a voucher that a family holds to go find units in the community. Increase the number of standard and high-performing PHAs, and increase the number of solvent public housing authorities. So next slide, please. So those are our overall goals. So this is a demonstration of the industry in Massachusetts, in the public housing industry. And you'll see here, kind of on the top left corner, ACC units. We have over 30,000 units of public housing in the state of Massachusetts, administered by about 66 PHAs. Like I said, there were 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth, but for federal public housing units, we only have about 66 PHAs that administer those. And they provide over 30,000 units of assistance. And you saw the slide before. We're trying to maintain average occupancy rate of 95.5% throughout the nation. Okay, you'll see this number of our occupancy rate here on that second line, over 96% occupied. And that's actually down a little bit. You can see these lines on the bottom that show a slight dip in occupancy in our public housing portfolio over time. We used to be touching right around 98%, and that's 98% of every available public housing unit that is in our federal portfolio was occupied not too long ago. Pandemic slowed it down a little bit. But anyway, in any case, at 96 or 97% occupancy, there's not a lot of room to house more families, right? People come off waiting lists that have been waiting on for apartments for a long, long time. There's not much turnover in our public housing, and it's a testament to our public housing authorities that maintain good housing, and people don't want to move out of it. So anyway, quick picture of our portfolio on public housing. Next slide. And the voucher program. The Housing Choice Voucher Program, the Section 8 program, by far the largest HUD-assisted housing program in the nation and in Massachusetts, quite frankly. We have just over 94,000 units of assistance. 94,000 units of assistance in Massachusetts, and I direct you to this chart on the bottom here. To date, year to date, $904 million. $904 million provided to landlords to house voucher families. It's a big investment. By the end of the year, you won't see it on this slide, but by the end of this calendar year, we're going to be spending over $1.2 billion in direct rental subsidies to families with vouchers in Massachusetts. We can break this down. There's going to be some links that are going to be provided in the handouts that you can drill down to each community in the Commonwealth. I didn't do it for this presentation. I really wanted to show you the impact. These are the links on it here. We probably won't go to it because we don't have enough time. But the amount of investment by HUD in Massachusetts, in the nation, and these are dollars provided directly to landlords, right? These are subsidies provided to landlords for our neediest families, okay? Next slide. This is kind of, on the right here, 10,000 units of assistance in this district right now between the voucher program and the public housing program, and the total amount of dollar investment in both the public housing program, where we provide operating subsidies to housing authorities, and construction subsidies to housing authorities. So it's a big investment. Next slide. Earlier this year, or last year, I just say, we had an emergency housing voucher program, was established by Congress, 70,000 units of assistance throughout the country. It was a rare time in the history of the voucher program, or any kind of portable voucher program, that there was such a big, large expansion of vouchers in the nation. There's been some additional vouchers provided in the past few months, incrementally, but there hasn't been a large expansion of the voucher program in the United States. 70,000 units for certain categories, and that was a response to the pandemic. Next slide. This is the production slide. Now, this is where I want to spend a couple of minutes on. I said earlier that there hasn't been a lot of new funding for new construction of public housing, okay? But the administrator or HUD over time has realized that maybe we can use a voucher to create housing, okay? Maybe we can use a voucher to create housing. And this is taking some of those resources that my good friend from CPD talked about, the home program, and all of those other low-income housing tax credits. And you can use those with leverage with a voucher. But it takes a commitment for a housing authority to want to project-base the vouchers. Now, the fundamental tenet of the voucher program and the Section 8 program is it's portable, and it's a choice voucher. That you have that voucher, you can take it to any community in Massachusetts or throughout the nation to rent a unit. Now, under these authorizations to do project basing of vouchers, a housing authority can choose to actually make a program that will tie these units of assistance to a home, whether it's multifamily, 2-unit mom and pop, 2-family unit, 3-family, a multifamily larger complex that they can commit. But it takes a commitment by a housing authority. And that's where these partnerships have to come in at the local level to try to convince a housing authority and their board of commissioners to establish a project-based voucher program. What it does is it provides a subsidy stream for a project or a development for 20 years or even longer. And it's a commitment, and it puts that hard unit in that community where that voucher doesn't go portable somewhere. It keeps that voucher assistance in that community. So it's a method that housing authorities can use to make more affordable units in their community. They can use up to 20% of their authorized voucher units for that capacity. We also have this rental assistance demonstration program. That's essentially a program that is trying to rehabilitate or modernize existing federal public housing. Like I said, some of these units are 30, 40, 50. In case of Boston, they're 80 years old. Or in Lowell, some of the first public housing developments in the nation and in Massachusetts that were built in the late 30s and early 40s. Okay, these are 80-year-old projects that need rehabilitation. Even though there's no new money coming to the public housing authorities, we can leverage, we can get them out of the Section 9 program, which is the public housing program, turn them over to Section 8 so they can take on their own debt and make that project more livable, more modernized. It's a program to convert public housing into kind of the Section 8 program. So anyway, I'm very proud of the industry in Massachusetts, the housing authorities in Massachusetts. They're high performing, you can see it on the occupancy rates, and we're spending a lot of money. And about 98% of every dollar that is provided to a housing authority on the voucher program is being spent to assist families in units. So that's the overview of the public housing program. I know we're running out of time, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bob. And now we will have our Director of Multifamily, Joe Crisafulli, join us to provide some feedback on our program and how it could be leveraged for housing production. And then I think we can make an executive decision, Stephanie and Congressman Auchincloss, to, once HUD finishes their presentations, we can move right to our state and nonprofit. I see people writing down notes and questions, and then do a question and answer session that includes all of them.
We can cut it down to, I mean, we can.
Let's do it. Let's give people a chance to ask a couple of questions just of HUD.
Yeah. We've got some buffer.
We have some
Okay,
buffers.
great.
They allocated 15 minutes for me to talk, and I'm not going to do that.
Excellent, very good. Joe, the floor is yours.
Thanks. I was told to try to get us back on track with the time, so. Oh, no problem. So I think I can boil it down to this. Affordable multifamily housing is critically important. Thank you. Seriously, we can advance. I'll try to get through this quickly. So I usually start these with, HUD's mission. And the mission of HUD is to create strong, sustainable, and inclusive communities and quality, affordable housing for all. And so everything we do is in support of that critical mission. What we do in multifamily is we assist practitioners like you folks in the development, rehabilitation, and maintenance of multi-unit affordable housing. When I say multifamily, fun fact, HUD defines multifamily as 5 units or greater. So it's not the 2, 3, and 4 families that many of you might be familiar with. We also provide capital grants to nonprofits for construction and support of rental housing. We provide project rental assistance, so these would be the Section 202 housing for very low income elderly and 811 housing for very low income persons with disabilities. We provide project-based rental assistance for low income residents. And project-based, this might be remedial for many of you, but project-based refers to HUD having a Section 8 contract or a project rental assistance contract with an individual owner for a specific multifamily development. So it's not portable, it continues to stay with the asset. Let's see. The housing we work with is all privately owned. That's important. It's not a housing authority. We work with mostly LLCs. In the case of 202-811, we work with 501c3 and C4 nonprofit mortgagors. Also, general partnerships. Organizationally, we sit in HUD's Office of Housing. We have two business lines in multifamily. We have a production business line and an asset management business line. The production, as the name implies, is really development with the FHA programs. And asset management, we're concerned with making sure that the housing is decent, safe, and sanitary for the residents. All told, we have about 2,600 developments that we oversee throughout New England. You can see the breakdown between assisted and FHA insured developments, and also the number that are a combination of both. You can slice this data many ways, and we'll get into a little bit of District 4 specifics. We could go to next slide, thanks. Looks like a bar graph to me. But this gives you a look at the assisted universe versus unassisted units in the select District 4 communities. Unassisted units may be market rate housing with FHA insurance or affordable with a combination of FHA insurance and low-income housing tax credits, or LIHTC. I should mention that Mass Housing is a key partner to HUD in administration of rental assistance. They serve as contract administrator for approximately 600 projects, accounting for some 52,000 rental units in Massachusetts under our performance-based contract administration program. And so in addition to processing payments on this segment of the portfolio, they're the first line responders to tenant complaints and concerns. So they do a wonderful job for us and really enjoy working with them. We could go to the next one. Looks like a pie chart. So the pie chart shows the amount of capital advances, which are Section 202 and 811 developments, and the rental assistance that flowed into District 4 projects during the last year. Off to the right, we see a breakdown of the 2,400 assisted units. These are Section 8 and 202, 811 project rental assistance contracts. And we have about 6,300 total multifamily units in District 4. Interestingly, there's $723 million in FHA insurance in force in this segment of the portfolio. We could go to the next one. And I'll just quickly go through these. So these are our key FHA production programs. The 221D4 program, Section 221D4, section referring to a section of the National Housing Act that authorizes HUD to insure mortgages. So D4 we use for new construction and substantial rehabilitation. 223F is our most popular program right now, and that's used for refinancing or acquisition. And an A7, 223A7 is used to refinance an existing FHA loan. Important to remember these FHA products, HUD is not actually lending the money. We have private mortgagees doing an initial underwriting, lending money, and then HUD conducts a secondary underwriting to make sure that the lender has underwritten it initially to FHA standards. And the FHA products, you know, they're very desirable. It's non-recourse financing for up to 40 years, so that's a key feature. I mentioned that. And we have the Section 542C risk-sharing program, very, very important program in Massachusetts. Under this program, Mass Housing, which is HUD's approved risk-sharing lender, does the underwriting. I believe Mass Housing is the biggest user of the risk-sharing program, and they're nodding, thank you. they're the biggest user of the risk-sharing program in the country, and they do a tremendous job. We have 288 of these in our portfolio. And let's see, of course, the 202 and 811 program, we could skip, I'll try to pick it up a little. I did want to mention that we have a Section 202 NOFO, Notice of Funding Opportunity out. It's $174.6 million. There's up to a $15 million set aside for projects with an intergenerational component, and that would support elderly residents that are acting as caregivers for children. The application deadline is 11:59 and 59 seconds Eastern Standard Time on January 25th. It's a very unforgiving process. If you're a second late, you'll be picked up by the system. And please make sure if you're applying to read the NOFO carefully. It's like I said, it can be unforgiving. And quickly, waiting lists. Shave some time here. HUD requires that owners and their agents maintain waiting lists of applicants. An owner should be able to tell an applicant where they stand on a waiting list and hopefully give an approximation of the wait time. Owners can close waiting lists if the wait time is excessive, usually over 1 year. Applicants have to meet the eligibility requirements for the program. There's a sole residence requirement, the screening requirements that the owners have to follow, and we have owners update the list frequently. We sometimes get calls from residents saying, the owner told me I was number 13 on the waiting list, and I checked back 5 months later, and now I'm 27. So, that's obviously a red flag. We go back and look at that. We target the waiting list management on our management and occupancy review. So I think I'll stop there, and thank you all for coming out. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Joe. I think we want to continue to go ahead with the question and answer session for my incredible HUD colleagues here. So we open up the floor. Stephanie will go to you, and my teammates will answer your questions.
All right.
Hi, my name is Kim Kushner. I'm a domestic violence victim, and I'm homeless because of it. I am on numerous waiting lists, and I came to try to learn how to navigate this. One of my questions for all of you is do you utilize the experience of actual renters within your programs? I don't mean the complaints. I mean, while you're formulating, do you get live feedback? That's one question. Because I think that would be helpful.
Our continuum of care, which is that our office provides all the homeless assistance on the federal side, and we work through continuum of cares. It's a competitive process that's out of Washington. But the answer to your question is that we require that all of those grantees have a person that was formerly homeless or homeless on their board, so they get that direct input as far as the design of the program.
Bob, Ellen Brunamore Bromwitz from CCBC and GBCatch, the Greater Bristol County Attleboro Taunton Coalition to End Homelessness. The Continuum of Care really would love your feedback. The woman who just spoke. We meet the third Friday at 10:30 a.m. Angie Clark and I, and there are a lot of other people here who attend that meeting. We need people. We need everybody in this room to help with this, as you talked about partnership, because we have over 100 people right now on our waiting list for housing. So I could talk for hours about this, but we really do need more help from people who are homeless or who are formerly homeless, from developers, from everybody. So, yeah.
I should mention for multifamily, we have the Violence Against Women Act, which requires our owners to make good faith efforts to relocate victims of domestic violence. The problem is the owners have encountered difficulty in finding a unit to accept these people. So we're working with the New England Assisted Housing Management Association to put together a consortium of owners so that, you know, they can share information on vacancies and get people off-site that are in risk quickly. So I did want to mention that.
And thank you, Joe. If you're answering questions up on the stage, just try to use the microphone so they can pick you up. All right.
Good morning. My name is Rob Corley. I'm the CEO of NeighborWorks Housing Solutions. And I really appreciate the forum this morning. And Bob, I could listen to you all morning because every one of those programs is very important and they're wonderful tools and they have done amazing things over the years. We've used every single one of them, not only in this district, but in a few others in the southern part of the state. I think the issue is that if we doubled everything you have, tripled it, wouldn't solve the problem. We have a huge problem, and it's a crisis, a major, major crisis. So in an effort to try to speed, we need speed. We need money fast. We develop projects all over the Commonwealth. Between the local government, the state government, everyone's stretched. We don't have enough people working. The money doesn't move as quickly. Subsidy layering, every single piece of every one of these projects, as you all know, the money doesn't move quick enough. So anything that you can do at HUD to put this in emergency status, because some of the funds that have come through recently have been less restrictive, they've moved quicker, and others, like Home ARP, are moving at a snail's pace because of the restrictions. So I know you can't fix everything, and I wish you could, and I know you would if you had the money, but speed you may be able to control. So if you could speed things up anyway, that would be great.
Yeah, I guess my 2 cents on that is that Secretary Fudge, under their leadership, we've had the most extensive hiring in years. I'm very passionate about this stuff, and when I hear, the issues that we face and realize, it seems daunting at times, but I think that the holistic approach and the things with the support of this administration, I've been at HUD for 20 years. It's the best that it's been, and I know everything was moving slower because of the pandemic. We were short-staffed. We did the best we could. It was a tough slog, but you have certainly my commitment, and my guys are working as hard as we can. But I do think the point that you make about the home ARP, I was dying. This was like the program that I wanted my whole life. And where's the notice? Where's the notice? When are they going to get, which is the rules, right? When is it going to get out? And I know how hard it is, but I think that, building the plane while it's moving, that thing was an issue. But I do think that, we need to move faster. We have technology, and I think we're on that road to doing those things. But that partnership, we need to strengthen, and we need to figure out what I call the pain points. I know they're in our homeless programs. We heard this person speak. My commitment is that I like fixing things, and I see things that just don't work right, and I get angry about that. But I hear you, and that's certainly a message that I'm going to bring back to my assistant secretary.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, I suppose now, or morning still. Colleen Hibbert-Kapler. I'm with South Coastal County's Legal Services, so I am one of the attorneys who works with individuals who are facing homelessness, facing eviction, trying to get into public housing. And one of the issues I work, especially with seniors, that we see time and time and time again right now at a little crisis level is the lack of housing. And I've heard you talk about that there is not a plan to build more public housing. There's a focus on shifting towards vouchers. The problem we're seeing in this area specifically is rents jumping $400, $600 a month. People cannot use a voucher in this area. Exactly. And frankly, we have a lack of physical new builds. And so I think that as much as that's a tough thing to do and it takes time, from my perspective, that's what this community needs, is more affordable units. Period.
Should I comment? So one of the things I wanted to mention, for the multifamily HUD developments, we heard earlier that there's a dearth of developable sites. One of the things that we've been able to do, if we're approached, we can release portions of sites from security of the mortgage for the purposes of constructing affordable housing. So that can be useful. So if there's any owners or agents out there that have, say, surplus land or land that could accommodate additional housing, love to talk to you about releasing a portion of that. You know, it takes a couple of years to line up the financing and everything, but if there's anything we can do to make that easier, we're happy to do that.
Thank you. Rep. Doherty?
Yes, thank you. Carol Doherty, representative from the 3rd Bristol District, Taunton and Easton. I am amazed. So I've been seated for almost a full term, and in the past 2 weeks I have received more than a half dozen calls from constituents who are in desperate situations. The family that was living in an RV in Massasoit State Park is closed. The local hotel allowed them to park their RV in the parking lot there. A handicapped father and mother, a disabled daughter, looking for housing. Both parents of both male and female in the partnership work, and so they fall outside of the limits of raft support to be able to have resources to get into an apartment. The other is a woman, single family, college student, is threatened with eviction. She has to get out of her apartment in 14 days. She's found another apartment, but no money to put the down payment on. What do we say to the individuals who are in desperate situation? I have to say I appreciate to the Congressman this wonderful forum, because it opens a lot of thoughts for me in terms of the directions that I can give my constituents in order to help to alleviate their problem. But talking offline with what I tell these constituents who are right now in a desperate situation. And I want to thank my friends from NeighborWorks and CCBC sitting back there who I work with to try to struggle through this problem. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rep. Doherty. One more question after yours.
I'm Stephanie Taylor. I'm chairwoman of Bristol County Commission on the Status of Women. I'm listening to all of these programs. I've utilized them. I work with people that utilize them. They are needed. I would like to see some stats of how much these programs have had to increase over the last 20 or 30 years, the funding into them, and how it correlates with the wages in the area, because I think the biggest barrier that's going on with housing is the lack of incomes to match what is needed to pay for these rents. And then the other barrier is credit. Credit should not be an issue on where you get to live. And then I'm gonna add another piece as a BIPOC person. We need ownership, home ownership, affordable home ownership, land ownership. Like, that's it.
And mass housing is going to speak to that as well. And we're going to do one last question. I'm sorry, I wish I could get to everybody.
And ditto to everything you said, one thing that the administration, Secretary Fudge is doing, and they released the Bridging the Wealth Gap, is looking at the people who live in public housing, the fact that they do, that they need to build credit, and how are we thinking about that as a federal government so that we can empower and give people access to economic mobility that also needs to be a part of the equation. So could not agree more.
Hi, my name is Jordan Stalker. I work as the ILC Housing Projects Coordinator, so I work with all of the independent living centers in the state. I started about a month and a half ago, and a lot of my work early on has just been to meet with different centers and identify issues that specifically folks with disabilities are facing when it comes to the housing search process. And one of the biggest issues that folks have brought up is accessibility. So a few folks have mentioned that, you know, the housing stock is extremely old. There's not a lot of modernization that's going on in a lot of cases. So folks that have disabilities, you know, realistically, this shouldn't be a barrier for folks to access housing. But this has just been a recurring issue for folks. So that's my first, I guess, comment / question is kind of what's being done in terms of HUD and different agencies to address this? And then also, is there a coordinated effort for folks, or I guess for public housing authorities and landlords to, connect with folks that have vouchers? I think that there's still a huge stigma when it comes to folks that are trying to utilize vouchers. Folks will get access to vouchers, but then not be able to use them. So I think that's a huge issue as well. And just making sure that we're doing some type of coordinated outreach with existing landlords, because yes, housing production is important, it's crucial, but folks need it now. So any way that we can kind of improve and expedite the process, I think would be beneficial.
Thanks, Jordan.
A lot of stuff to unpack there. Number one, folks have to realize that Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, it requires reasonable accommodations, right, for folks with disabilities. And it could take various forms, whether it's reasonable accommodation to policies or design or characteristics of unit. Well, you certainly know that 504 should be enforced, right? So that's number one on the kind of the disability side. I want to go back to something that was mentioned there earlier about the cost, and something that HUD has recognized here recently is the fair market rents. And everybody, I think, knows what fair market rents probably are. And fair market rents are what HUD sets as at the 40th percentile of a community's area. You know, what 40% of the units fall below and 60% above. Fair market rents haven't necessarily kept up with the market, right? I see a lot of people nodding. HUD this year for fiscal year ending 23, or beginning October 1st, actually started to use market data to set fair market rents. So the value of a voucher, because the voucher is based on fair market rents, has actually increased fairly substantially in the Northeast, especially that the value has gone up. So it's a recognition by HUD to be a little bit more nimble with the market because of the existing rules that set fair market rents. So there is some more resourcing. You kind of saw, and this goes to this access to public housing or a voucher. And I showed you this. We're using it at 97, 98%, right? And when there's turnover, and there's no new units coming on, when we have turnover of this, about 4 or 5% of those units in an annual, per annum, that's still not a lot of people that are getting into the housing. And that's why these waiting lists are huge. Tens of thousands of people on a waiting list for a voucher in Massachusetts. And combine that with the supply that isn't there. And it used to be, when you got a voucher in your hand 5 or 6, 7 years ago, it was your ticket out of a situation that you were in that was horrible. And we had utilization of these vouchers, and when people used them, they were using them at 75 to 80% of their capacity, meaning there were very few people that couldn't use that voucher. You know what that stat is these days, that people that can't use a voucher? And it's for all these things that we're talking about. About 40 to 60% in some communities, right? In some housing authorities. Because the units aren't there, the cost is too high.
Right.
And I don't know what the answer is. Do we keep on increasing fair market rents so those families can compete in that market? Probably. Right. Probably, because that's the only way we have to do it these days. Yeah. Because we're not building a lot of units.
I think part of today is asking those questions and working towards finding answers together. So I appreciate all of the HUD panelists that were here with us today. Thank you, Bob, and Joe. And if you all want to stand up and stretch while we invite the state and local partners to the stage for our second part of our program. And if you had a question that you did not get answered, please write it down, pass it to me. We'll get you an answer.
Welcome back. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome our state and nonprofit partners who are already on the stage with me. Nancy McDonald, Director of Government Affairs for Mass Housing, Eric Shupin, Director of Public Policy for CHAPA, and Lesbeth Hayer, Vice President of Two Life Communities. Please take the moment to introduce yourselves and tell us about your organizations and resources. Nancy, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Hi everyone, my name is Nancy McDonald. I'm the Director of Government Affairs at Mass Housing. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm representing Crystal Cornegay, our Executive Director, who wasn't able to be here today. Mass Housing is also grateful to Congressman Auchincloss, not just for this event, but for his tremendous support of housing in Congress and for Mass Housing in particular, and all of the funding that he has helped direct to the Commonwealth. So I'll go to the next slide. I'll try to move through these quickly. I do want to tell people a little bit about what Mass Housing is, because not everybody knows. We are a quasi-public agency in Massachusetts. We were created by an act of the legislature in 1966. And we don't get any money from the Commonwealth to support our operation. We raise our capital by selling taxable and tax-exempt bonds on Wall Street, and then we use the proceeds from the sale of those bonds to make loans to developers who build mixed income housing that has an affordable component that they agree to keep affordable over the long term. So that's one side of our business on the rental side. We also do home ownership lending, and the way that we do that is through a large network of lenders all across the Commonwealth, and we make loans to low and moderate income home buyers. So just to give you a sense of our scope, since our inception in 1966, we have financed $27 billion in financing in Massachusetts. In the last 5 years alone, $7.2 billion. And just in the last 5 years, 12,500 home buyers. Our total number since the beginning of time is like 90,000. And then financed the production or preservation of 23,000 affordable rental units just in the last 5 years. I'll go to the next slide. This just gives you a sense of our, overall scope. 3.38 billion in total financing for homeownership, including our down payment assistance program. Part of that I'll talk about in a minute. And then our rental lending commitments. I'm not going to go over all this because you want to hear about some other programs, so I'll go to the next slide. Specifically in the 4th Congressional District, we're really proud of our numbers here. Cumulatively, 1.3 billion in total financing for homeownership, representing over 7,000 home mortgage loans. And our current rental portfolio here is close to 50 developments and over 3,000 affordable units of housing total. I'll go to the next slide. So one of the things I really wanted to talk about today was a new program that Mass Housing has developed over the last couple of years to find a way to finance the production of affordable homeownership units. Producing affordable rental units has been what we have done well, and we've also been very successful in making home loans to low and moderate income home buyers. Through some work that our executive director commissioned over the last few years, she put together an advisory group which was called REACH to consider the challenges in Massachusetts related to the racial homeownership gap, which we are the 6th worst in the country in terms of our racial homeownership gap. And our executive director is really motivated by a desire to see that change and to make that change happen. Through our cooperative work with the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus at the State House and with Governor Baker, we had the opportunity to get $65 million from the state back in 2019. And this was directly a result of our work talking about the disparities in homeownership as it relates to race. We were very, very pleased to get the $65 million. The governor announced it in the summer of 2019 and said, hey, can you guys come up with a program to build affordable homeownership units? Here's $65 million, can you figure it out? So we took on that challenge. We were very pleased to have the opportunity because it had been, since the 1980s, the state of Massachusetts has not had a homeownership production program for affordable units. That's a really important point because while we can make loans to people who want to buy a home, what we also need is homeownership units that are more affordable to people. And then we couple that with our mortgage lending. So we've produced what we call the Commonwealth Builder Program. And what we wanted to do was consider a way that this program could work most effectively for borrowers of color. And we needed to think about how we could do that. So we went to our data on the homeownership side of our business to say, where are buyers of color buying right now? And what the trend was is for what are called the gateway cities in Massachusetts, 26 cities, which are places like Fall River and New Bedford and Brockton and Attleboro and Taunton and Quincy. And we said we're going to target this program specifically for producing new affordable homeownership units in those communities, because that's where we see that borrowers of color want to buy. And there are lots of reasons for that, because it's close to transit, you know, they're emerging communities, and so that's how we have targeted it. What we've done specifically is to create this program to encourage developers to want to build homeownership units, because we heard from them that that's a great challenge. Because unlike the subsidy side of our business on rental, when someone's trying to build a new unit of homeownership housing, they would say to us, well, if it costs us $400,000 to build this unit, which that would be a generous number right now, and that number is not affordable to someone who's low or moderate income, how do we make up the difference between what that person can afford to spend and what it's costing us to build this? And that's how we developed the program. We said, well, what about if we create a subsidy where at the end of the process, we will buy down the cost of a unit to make it affordable to a low and moderate income borrower based on area median income numbers. And that's where Commonwealth Builder has come in. The other challenge that we've had is that developers haven't really been in the business of creating affordable homeownership units for a lot of time. So we really had to drum up support for that. We also had worked to reach out to all of the gateway city mayors, because a component of this program is that the community has to have some kind of investment, and I won't get into all those details, but that can come in a lot of forms, not just money. There are other things. And this is what we did. We went out and met with every single mayor in every single gateway city to tell them about this program, to tell them that when developers are talking to them about things they want to build, to say, what about if you use Commonwealth Builder? We've also asked them to consider any vacant lots that they might have anywhere, and consider talking to developers and saying, hey, do you want to build something on this lot? So that's the Commonwealth Builder program. As I said, we have targeted it specifically for those communities to create opportunities for buyers of color. Can I see the next slide? And then an important part of this is that we have also built into this program a much more generous deed rider. Meaning, when we build a unit through Commonwealth Builder, typically affordable units would have a deed rider that says that it would stay affordable for that full 30 years. We've actually changed that a little bit. And through a formula that we use that's kind of complicated, I don't have enough time for right now, it burns off more quickly, so that by year 15, that borrower has an opportunity to realize the equity in that home and to benefit from the equity growth of that unit. Because all of us in this room who may be lucky enough to own a home, myself included, have at times utilized our home for other things. I have 3 daughters. They are all have gone or are going to college, and that's where all my money came from, was my house. Everybody ought to have that opportunity. So that's why the deed rider is different for Commonwealth Builder. We think it's a key part of the program, and we're really excited about it. I also want to talk about Mass Dreams. Through the work of folks like Congressman Auchincloss and all of the Massachusetts delegation, the ARPA funds that came to Massachusetts, American Rescue Plan Act funds, were allocated by the legislature. Thank you for your allocations last year as part of the end of the year budget. And included in that was $65 million for down payment assistance. What we've now created is a new down payment assistance program. Mass Housing had its own. This is layered on top of that. We work cooperatively with another quasi-public agency. And we're offering up to $50,000 in down payment assistance for folks who live presently in one of the 26 gateway cities that I talked about, and then 3 other communities, including Boston, Randolph, and Framingham, because those are all categorized as disproportionately affected by COVID. So this is what we're looking at here. It's up to $50,000 for borrowers at 100% or less of AMI, and $35,000 to borrowers between 105 and 135% of AMI. And there's a lot of details here. There'll be links in the information that I'm providing. But what I want to tell you is that we started this 7 weeks ago, and we knew that we needed to go quickly. And we are extremely proud of the fact that in 7 weeks, we've already got $7 million out the door to borrowers. It's moving, and we want to do more. And as I said, this is really important to know that for people that are looking to buy a home, it layers on top of what mass housing already does. Can I see the next slide? I wanted to just give you a sense of what these numbers mean for Mass Dreams, because I can tell you it's 100% of AMI, but it's like, well, what does that really mean? So in Bristol County, 100% of AMI is $99,600. So if you earn that or less, then you qualify for the up to $50,000, and you can see the other numbers there. So I could talk a lot about mass housing, and this is the most important stuff that I want to talk about right now. We're really excited about it. We are trying hard to move this money and to make sure that it's getting out to the people that need it the most. Thank you.
And for folks furiously taking notes, we are going to send the slide deck out to you, to your emails after the program today.
Thank you, Nancy, so much. It's a perfect demonstration of the federal government and state government working together, leveraging federal dollars to really meet a need. And now we have Eric Shupin, Director of Public Policy for CHAPA.
Thank you so much for having me this morning. Appreciate the opportunity, and I am excited about this conversation, and I really hope this goes on the road and every district around Massachusetts hosts one of these. This is really outstanding, so thank you to Representative Auchincloss and Tawana, thank you. So my name is Eric Shupin. I'm the Director of Public Policy at CHAPA. We're the Citizens Housing and Planning Association. You can go to the next slide. And I'm going to talk about building community coalitions for housing. A little bit about who we are as an organization. We started about 50 years ago during the Civil Rights Movement, and back then, affordable housing was a challenge. And you know what? Today, it remains a challenge. But what we do is we work to increase access to affordable housing, to do more of it, and to partner at the federal, state, and local levels to do that. Our guiding principle is that every person in Massachusetts deserves a safe, healthy, and affordable place to call home in a community that they choose. And we do that by advocating for opportunity, and as the Director of Public Policy, that's what I coordinate. Expanding access to housing, we coordinate first-time homebuyer education courses throughout the region. We monitor 40B homeownership resales, and also developing the field, making sure that there are smart, dedicated people here to do affordable housing. So next slide. So I'm here today specifically to talk about building the pro-housing voice in communities. And working on policy, we can have outstanding, and we do have outstanding partners at the federal level. We have outstanding partners at the state level, and there's some from the state legislature here that I have to say thank you for the economic development bill that just passed. There was over $450 million for affordable housing, including for home ownership. Yes, which is truly outstanding. I don't think you can go to many other states and say that, so thank you. But we can have as much support at the federal level, at the state level, but where the rubber meets the road is at the local level. What happens there makes or breaks what we do with all of the resources that are provided, and that's why it's so exciting to speak with all of you today. So again, we know that local support can make or break new housing development. Yet, as I'm sure anybody who has sat through a community meeting, a zoning board of appeals hearing, it's often not the strong pro-housing voice that's the loudest, it's those speaking up against housing. Those who may be afraid of what it means for their community, of changing our community character, or concerns about traffic, or what is it going to mean for our schools. And so what we are working to do, and since 2018, we have a municipal engagement initiative that works at that local level to try to change the conversation, to support local housing efforts, to do more affordable housing. Although there may be a lot of people who show up in opposition, it can be hard for people to show up at these meetings, and really scary or intimidating to show up and try to voice your support. Yet that support we know is there. We know that each city or town has its own unique housing challenges, so our municipal engagement initiative goes into communities to work with them to develop that pro-housing voice, so that we focus on bringing together as many people in support of affordable housing to speak up and to make it a win-win. We never want to think of this as a zero-sum game of I win, you lose when it comes to housing. we all win when everybody has a safe and affordable place to call home, and our communities are stronger for it, and that's the narrative that we want to take forward. So going to our next slide, and we could actually skip to the next one. So I spoke about the Municipal Engagement Initiative. What I am really excited to share about is an opportunity for the cities and towns here today is we actually have an application open for our Municipal Engagement Initiative. So like I said, we work with communities, but we are a staff of 14 at CHAPA, small but mighty, so we can't work with everyone at the same time. From time to time, we open up applications to gather from communities or pro-housing groups within communities to invite you to work together with us on the Municipal Engagement Initiative. And so we are accepting applications right now, not for our full Municipal Engagement Initiative, which can be an intensive year-long collaboration, but instead for our Municipal Engagement Lite. And this is about getting efforts that Pro-Housing Voice launched and by working to create a stakeholder list, beginning outreach to those folks, holding and facilitating coalition launch meetings, and providing some ideas of next steps to grow that coalition to say, yes, we do want to support more affordable housing in our community. For those of you who are interested in either your community or you have a coalition that may be interested in applying, there is going to be a link. You'll see that these are linked on the screen here. When you get those slides, you'll be able to access that application and learn more. Some examples of things that we've done through our Municipal Engagement Initiative. In Acton, we worked with the Housing for All Acton Coalition to move forward 3 pro-housing things at a Springtown meeting, including enacting accessory dwelling units by right and giving town-owned land for affordable housing. In Medford, we worked with Housing Medford to pass an inclusionary zoning bylaw, their first that they've ever passed. And in Amherst, we worked with the Amherst Affordable Housing Coalition to advocate for funds from the CPA to go towards an affordable housing development. So again, it's those kinds of specific things that we can help you with. Not just specific things, but even just getting off the ground and organizing a pro-housing voice. That's something that we can do too. Going to the next slide. So the folks that we look to bring together is really anyone and everyone who benefits from housing, which we know is anyone and everyone. We have a big tent coalition model that brings together municipal staff and elected officials, housing advocates, developers, but moving beyond just the housing community, local businesses, civic groups, service providers, houses of worship, environmental groups, transit advocates, renters and homeowners, of course, cultural groups, and racial justice advocates. We know housing transcends all of these things, and so that's who we need to go out and engage with to say, hey, let's show up at these community meetings and speak up for affordable housing. So going to the next slide. So where can these coalitions have an impact? It's developing strategies at the municipal level to put together a housing production plan, identifying and supporting municipal-owned sites as locations for housing, attending planning and zoning meetings to discuss proposed projects, and getting your message out to the community, submitting letters to the editor, talking with your local elected officials, talking with your state and federal officials to debunk myths that we often hear, to, again, change that narrative that housing is not something that we need to be afraid of. It's something that we should embrace, and that it can make and will make our community stronger. So getting then to the last slide, just how to get in touch with us. Like I said, we're a small but mighty staff, and we have a lot of great dedicated folks working on these issues. These are a list of names who work on the Municipal Engagement Initiative at CHAPA, as well as myself as the Director of Public Policy. And of course, we always invite people to become engaged with our work at CHAPA, setting policy through many of our committees. We work on fair housing, on rental assistance, on building blocks, which is budget advocacy, so making sure we have enough funding for programs like public housing and rental assistance, and production and preservation, always trying to build more affordable housing and preserve the affordable housing we have, because we can't afford to lose just one unit. So that is what I have today. Again, as you get these slides, please click on those links and learn how you can apply to the Municipal Engagement Initiative to see if we can help you achieve what you'd like to do with housing in your community. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And now we have Elizabeth Ayer, Vice President of Two Life Communities.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the Congressman and Regional Director Matias for hosting this really important conversation. And if you could just move on to the next slide. Two Life Communities is a nonprofit organization. We've been around for almost 60 years. We develop, own, operate, and provide all the services for the roughly 1,300 apartments and over 1,600 lower income older adults who live with us. The median income of our residents is $12,000 a year. Figuring out how to make housing affordable and access to services and supports affordable for the people who live with us is the magic of what we do. And my goal today is to give you a quick window into a couple of projects that we're working on, which I just want to reinforce. It's all about the amazing partnerships that we're talking about in this room, about all levels of government and community coming together. And I want to unpack a couple of projects to hopefully help all of you see from the seats you're sitting in today and what you bring to this table, how you can help to make this possible. And the reason it's so important, in particular for older adults right now, and I want to pick up on a comment that the Congressman shared, the amount of panic and desperation among older adults is dramatic. The baby boom generation is the generation that is growing the fastest right now, and the second half of the boomer generation is the most economically stressed, because when you're lucky enough to own a home, you're mortgaging it to send your kids to college. When you've been a renter your whole life and you're paying 60, 80% of your median income, you cannot save enough. And when you retire and you shift onto Social Security, you can go from earning 60, 70, even over $100,000 a year to, if you've maxed out your Social Security, you are earning less than $40,000 a year. That is not enough to afford a tax credit apartment. So our primary driver of production right now, which is the LIHTC program, and it's hugely important and we need to advocate for it, is the base building block. And what we have to do is think about the passionate commitment we have to the people we're serving, and be it seniors, be it homeless families, be it homeless elders, be it people with special needs or disabilities. Know who it is you're trying to serve and what it takes to put all of the pieces together, and then to leverage all of these amazing partners we have to make it possible, because it is possible. It is possible to serve really poor seniors and serve them well, but it's how we pull these pieces together that makes that possible. And before I move on, I just want to share an important stat. Massachusetts is the worst in the nation in elder economic insecurity. The worst. It's because of the combined cost of housing and care in this state. And because of that, we also have the highest nursing home placement rate in the entire country. And that's not because our people are more frail. It's because they can't afford to live in a place that's accessible and supportive, where they can afford their daily costs, and as their need for care increases, that they become more frail accessing that care. So how we package all of this is so key to really fighting what we refuse to accept, which is lives of loneliness and economic insecurity for older adults. So let me show you how we're doing that. So this is, I love this project. It's a fabulous one. It tells almost every aspect of the story of how we pull these things together, and it's in the district. So this is in Newton. Two Life Communities has owned Golda Meir House. It currently is about 200 apartments of extremely low-income housing for seniors. It was built under the old 202 program. It has 100% Section 8 and PRAC. So that combination of that amazing capital grant from the federal government layered on with ongoing operating subsidy is what lets us house extremely poor people, because they're only paying 30% of their income to live with us. But we're getting that operating cost standard from HUD through Section 8 and PRAC that lets us operate at a very high standard. And because HUD recognizes the important cost of services for seniors as well, we're able through our annual operating budget to get some resources to provide services for our seniors. So this project is actually this great story of the importance of local land, and the importance, and this was mentioned earlier, of HUD releasing land adjacent to existing properties to make more development possible. So we had these 199, 200 apartments. Next to it, a vacant, unutilized empty water tower that was owned by the city of Newton, plus additional land that was under the existing Golden Mayer house that we worked with HUD to release to allow this combination of the city making this RFP available at a very low cost to leverage the land to expand Golden Mayer by 68 units, HUD releasing that land, and if you want to go to the next slide, building, and we're in the process of constructing this right now, 68 more apartments for Golden Mayer House. So at the community level, again, that importance of local land and local resources and local permitting and beyond the kind of coalitions at the permitting level and the political issues associated with permitting, it's also really important to pay attention to your neighbors. And so how we both do what Eric's talking about, which is build coalitions and create the zoning environment that makes these things possible is really important. And then knowing how to tell your story and bring those most local partners onto your team as well, your neighbors, is hugely important. And we find that what makes that most successful is always leading with the story, always leading with the mission, explaining to people why this is important, the impact it will have, being known, being available, becoming trusted, and really opening up dialogue and being responsive. We don't start with saying we want 200 apartments and negotiating it down to 100. We start with what's right, what we need, and we make the case. And we generally find that our local, most immediate neighbors do come along if you listen and you adjust and you respond. So this is a story where local land, HUD release, City of Newton, in addition to making that land available, came in with a commitment of home funds. We heard how those federal funds flow through local communities, combined with a very strong Community Preservation Act award that helped to bring the affordability to an even greater level, and then layering on top of that the state and federal programs that we can access to deepen that affordability. And this is a really important example of where we used the LIHTC program. It's a 4% LIHTC. We also used the state LIHTC program, which we're very, very lucky to have, and then got all the alphabet soup of soft debt sources from the state. And as I mentioned, are we out of time?
No, we are not out of time, but something came up, and unfortunately the congressman has to go. And so we didn't want to rush your presentation, so if you don't mind, we're just going to interrupt. He's going to say his closing remarks, and then you can finish your presentation.
Absolutely.
I apologize for butting in, but I didn't want to just leave without saying goodbye to everybody. The Speaker of the House has rallied the troops, and so we're responding. It'll be an interesting conversation the day after the election. But I'm just so happy that we all could come together today. I spent 5 years on the Land Use Committee on the City Council before coming to Congress, talking about housing development, having hour-long conversations with neighbors about building new housing. I'm a vice chair of the Financial Services Committee in Congress right now with jurisdiction over housing. As a graduate student, I worked on state housing policy. This stuff's in my DNA. This state has such opportunity ahead of it. We are a powerhouse of talent and work ethic here in the Commonwealth. We cannot reach our full potential without solving the affordable housing crisis. We have got to build more housing in this state. I hear you loud and clear about the speed and the volume of federal funds, both to expand access, but also to spur more production. And I hope that you found this conversation edifying. And most of all, I hope that you can talk to one another after this and make new connections. Juana, would you mind just coming up here with me? I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing and for putting together your team as well. Thank you very much. Be well, everybody. I apologize for butting in.
Good luck.
Thank you, Congressman.
And we know we are getting up to it, so if after Elizabeth finishes her presentation you have to leave, we appreciate you participating. We will still do the Q&A, and again, if anybody has any questions they weren't able to get to, then just email me or write it down, hand it to me, and we'll get you your answer. But please continue, and I'm so sorry for interrupting.
No worries. Thank you. So We could have stopped at the state level and used the LIHTC and the soft debt programs, plus our local funds. But again, this problem of the LIHTC program isn't a program that was developed for senior housing. It was really developed for family housing, for people that have moderate incomes, low incomes, that are really intended to increase over time, not decrease, like senior income does, because when you're living on a fixed Social Security income and you become frail, you're spending down, you're not increasing. So we look to layer on top of that Section 8 to bring those rents down and make them as affordable as possible. And that's where both project-based Section 8 attached to the apartments is hugely important, and we're really lucky to partner with both local housing authorities and also DHCD to layer on those project-based Section 8s. We are one of the only, maybe the only state in the country that has our own local Section 8 program, the MRVP program, which is another extremely important resource to layer on top of the LIHTC to get those rents down. But there's a limited number of those as well. It still wasn't enough. So we actually went to the federal government and we applied for the 202. And we were actually, the 202 was shelved in 2012 through sequestration, through the leadership, much of which among our delegation. We got it restored in 2018. This project was one of the first to receive an award under the new 202, which is very much this mixed finance program where you layer 202 on top of a LIHTC project, which brings you this additional capital advance from the federal government. We got another $4 million in capital resources to build. And then on top of that, we got 25 PRAC subsidies that were mentioned earlier. So this project has a combination of MRVP, Section 8, and PRAC, plus all of these state, local, and federal capital sources. And it's that whole combination. And it's not hard, but it is unbelievably doable. And the amazing partners in energy and the commitment that everybody in this room has to do this is what makes this possible. And the job of a developer is to know all these stakeholders and figure out how to leverage and package all of this to make this possible. So I wanted to share this, and in particular really point out that not only did HUD make the land available to do this and layer on this 202 plus the PRAC and the capital advance, but they also worked with us to figure out how to knit this building into the existing Golda Meir house and to build in funding for services for the seniors, so that when you move into one of the new units, your floor is immediately connected to the other floors in the building, so it feels like one whole community, and the residents of the new building can access all the services that were already existing in Golda Meir house. So that was complicated, and our partners at the federal level were just fabulous in helping to figure out how to take each of these challenges and at the end of the day end up with this incredible project that we are already marketed. We have over 700 people who have applied for the housing, and it'll be ready for occupancy next year. So I'll just quickly share two more just to again give you a vision of what's possible. I love this one too because this is another story of local, state, federal, and community. This is the redevelopment of public housing in Boston. So J.J. Carroll is, if you go to the next slide actually, you can see in the upper two pictures, was an old federal senior public housing development, 2-story walk-up, inaccessible, 64 apartments. Sadly, the people who lived on the top floor were called shut-ins because there's no elevators in these buildings. And when somebody had a medical emergency, the hallways, which were built to code in the 1940s or 50s, weren't wide enough to fit a stretcher. People had to be carried out on sheets if there was a 911 call to this building. And so immediately adjacent, you can see an aerial of it's actually under construction right now, but that orange building to the right and what's behind it is Two Life's Brighton campus. So an amazing adjacency opportunity again. Local land controlled by the Boston Housing Authority, obsolete housing that couldn't serve the population, and a vision by the city and the Boston Housing Authority to say, how do we leverage this land that's available and this need and our neighbor to create something better. So what we're doing is we're converting this 64-unit obsolete public housing building into 142 new, all affordable building apartments connected to our Brighton campus. Again, access to those services. And on the ground floor, we're actually building a PACE center. So we're also bringing a healthcare clinic onto the site that is this amazing federal program that combines Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement for frail seniors in a medical practice on site. So the people who live in J.J. Carroll plus the other 900 people that live in the rest of our campus now will have access to Medicare and Medicaid health services. Very convenient, very affordable. And this is possible because of the creativity of leveraging public land. We're doing it under a ground lease. So we're not actually going to own the land. We're partnering with the Housing Authority in the long term under a ground lease. And HUD approved the redevelopment of this under the Demo Dispo program, which means that not only do we have permission to build these additional units, but we're able to take the operating subsidy that was public housing operating subsidy and in the new life of J.J. Carroll, convert that into ongoing project-based vouchers for those 64 replacement units that are being built in their place. And then on top of that, we layered Section 8, MRVP, all the soft debt sources from the state and also from the city to end up with, again, what is going to now be 142 units of all affordable housing. And this one, I didn't say this under GOLDA, but this one is permitted under Article 80. So hugely important partner in the city of Boston, understanding both development and planning. Golda Meir was done under the amazing 40B comp permit program, hugely important to what we do. And just so I can get us to our discussion more quickly, I'll show you the last one, which was also permitted under 40B. This is in Waltham. So the story behind this one is on the left, you have the Leland home, which was a 38-bed rest home. So I don't know if you're familiar with those. It's kind of a step-down nursing home. They get about half the Medicaid rates that a regular nursing home gets, but the people are almost as frail, and the regulations in terms of service provision is really high. So rest homes are failing. They're not economically viable, but it's a really important population to serve. And people who can, from a financial and care need, live in a rest home can also live very successfully in supportive housing, where there's programs and engagement and services and communities. So figuring out how we get people out of institutional and kind of nursing home like environments and into supportive housing with services can keep people living in a community setting instead of an institutional setting. And that's what everybody wants. I can tell you, with 2 Life and our population, at any given time, 40 to 50% of people who live with us are technically nursing home eligible, meaning they need a level of care that would make them eligible for a Medicaid nursing home. But we can house them. Only 2% who leave us a year leave us for a nursing home because of all the services we're able to layer on top of that. And that's not only a better outcome for people's daily living, but it's better for the state. And we've done some kind of analytics on this, and we figure if you wrap everything in that we do, production, making the housing affordable, all the services, if you amortize all of that into what would be the cost per year to operate what we do, it's probably about $20,000 to $25,000 per unit per year. So it's more because of the services, and I'm talking about hands-on care services, not just programs. Well, 25 to 30,000 a year-ish, as compared to a Medicaid nursing home bed, which costs about 130 to 150,000 a year. How many more years can you get out of living in what we do for the same population that otherwise would be in a nursing home? It's just financially smarter as well. So this is one where, if you go to the next slide quickly, local, really amazing community board that ran this nursing home. They had a better vision. They worked with us. It was historic. The Historic Commission loved the continuation of serving the same and more. We're going from 38 rest home beds to 68 affordable apartments. So they approved demolition. They supported us in demolition of the building, and layering on top of that again, LIHTC, all the soft debt sources, and project-based MRVP in Section 8. So I'll stop. I could talk for hours about each of these projects. I love them all. But hopefully you've just seen a glimmer of an idea of what you can do, regardless of the level of government or community that you work at, to become a partner and help to leverage these amazing opportunities.
So join me in giving them a round of applause. Thank you, Lisbeth. You know, I was talking to my team and I was like, it would be great to highlight projects that we've done. And I think you did it so nicely, and it closes our discussion in a way that shows us what's possible when we come together and work together. I think we want to do a couple questions. People are still in the room. We have a packed room, so we want to take advantage of that.
Rep. Hawkins?
Thank you, Elizabeth. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge two people in the room, Janet Ricciardi from United Way, who together with me and one other person started with 0, and we're going to be graping ground with the expert guidance of Rob Corley from NeighborWorks on a new homeless facility with 18 crisis beds and 22 permanent supported housing units in a few weeks. Can't believe we pulled this off. But Elizabeth, I'm terribly sleep deprived from the election. But you've made me stand up and speak. One of the things that's going on in Attleboro is the Sandcastle Mobile Home Park, which is probably worth $3 million. Like a lot of the mobile home parks, they're owned by family owned, and now's the time when the real estate is golden to sell them. And they offered to sell it. The tenants, of course, have first right of refusal. The bank was willing to mortgage it for $10 million, which sounds insane to me. And a private hedge fund company from Texas came in and outbid them with cash, $13 million. This is a 55-plus mobile home park. They own the homes, but they rent the little lot of land. And you know what happened is they started moving up the rents, changing the leases, and all of a sudden we have widows on $1,500 a month Social Security who cannot absorb a $400 or $500 a month rent increase. Worse, this company flipped it a year later for $19 million. And they are panicked beyond words. I've been able to put together some legislation to offer them some level of protection, together with the Attorney General's office and House Counsel. But they're still in jeopardy. Some of them are going to get squeezed out, and there's no place for them to go. And I think I would much like to talk to you afterwards about some of the programs you're talking about. That may be very useful in our district. So thank you.
Thank you. And we'll do one more over here in the back.
Thank you for the forum today. My name is Dennis Ackerman. I am the consultant to the Taunton Redevelopment Authority, as well as the chairman of the Taunton Zoning Board, vice chairman of the Planning Board. So I'm well aware of being beat up at all these meetings by all the people coming and oppose not in my neighborhood. I would request from the legislature, if they could do one thing to help affordable housing, would put in the 40B regulation that you only need a simple majority to approve a project, because what you do when you can go for a special permit or a variance, you need a super majority, and the intimidation factor is unreal. Then I asked for Mass Housing if you can add a requirement that developers meet with the neighbors prior to them showing up to the zoning board or planning board. It would help us immensely. We're fortunate in Taunton that we have CCBC, who is involved in a lot of our projects, and most of the developers go to them, they inform them also to go meet with the neighbors. And we have over 70 units coming in the next 3 to 4 months that they are involved in. They're involved in 2 out of the 3. One's being involved with mass development that hasn't been released yet and knowledge of. So we need that. We need the legislation help to go to the 40B requirement and mass development to put that one requirement before they go to a public hearing, that they meet with the neighbors. And I would appreciate that.
Thank you. I see some questions here as well, Stephanie.
Okay.
And there.
We're not going to be able to get to everybody. Again, we'll, if you need to write we'll do.
I'll be really quick. I just have a question for Mass Housing. Tanya Lobo from True Diversity in Taunton. So one of the things, or some of the questions that usually come to me are there any programs for families who have already bought homes who do not have the income to stay in their homes and who are facing foreclosure? Within the last 5, to 10 years, a lot of families are now facing homelessness as well because the income is not matching what they have to pay out. I've gone through this with food and oil and all this other stuff, especially in Taunton. We have a lot of families who just can't even afford to stay in their homes. Are there talks about programs for families to be able to get assistance in paying their mortgages, because it's those medium income families who are kind of left out of things because they can't afford, they don't qualify for subsidies, but can't afford to stay in their homes?
So Mass Housing's programs are specific to our portfolio of loans, unfortunately. So we have programs that deal with our home buyers, but we don't have the jurisdiction to have programs that would extend. I understand so you're talking about people whose other expenses have gone up so much that it's making the mortgage itself unaffordable.
Right, because
yeah.
they sustain themselves.
Right. And I mean, I will say to you that the HALF program is out there right now relative to folks that had difficulties that they faced because of COVID. But we can talk after.
And the HALF is the Home Ownership Assistance
Oh,
Fund.
yes, I'm sorry, the Home Ownership Assistance Fund. So we can talk after if you want, yeah.
Hi, I'm Erin. That's loud. Hi, I'm Erin Basler. I'm currently Youth Services Coordinator at Metro West Center for Independent Living, northern chunk of 4. I used to be the Disability Outreach Coordinator at New Hope, which has the southern-ish chunk of 4. So the intersection of interpersonal violence and disability. My question is, because a lot of folks in speaking have brought it up today, Representative Hawkins mentioned our local prefab 62 plus community. Mr. Suica was talking about having to adjust market rate stuff. How, as advocates and fellow citizens in our area, can we work to fortify the stick that might help control some of the larger affordability issues, especially for people who are middle-income families?
That's a great question. And on the fair market rents, right, we saw a 10% increase in Region 1. In some places, we even saw a 20% increase. But unless that gets approved by Congress again, we're not going to be able to sustain that increase. So as you think about our delegation and who our members are, we did have an election, and that outcome of that election is going to have a lot to say. But making sure that our elected officials know we need this funding to sustain the high increases, we've seen is really important. So I think that's a really important question, and I don't know if anyone else here on the stage would add anything else to that.
I'll just say, we always, and it was mentioned before, the carrots and the sticks, using all the tools that you have. We, of course, always want to be in partnership, but we do have, again, partners in the legislature who are passing legislation that make it easier to approve housing. The 50% majority in able to pass good pro-smart growth housing was brought up by the legislature just 2 years ago. New zoning requirements to require multifamily zoning and communities served by the MBTA. So those are the kinds of carrots and sticks that we think can really be helpful. And then there are just other ways thinking creatively about how to use things like the fair market rents, and it's not only the fair market rents, but there are also small area fair market rents that is a new tool that HUD is using to make them more dynamic to local markets, I would say. And so you can look to places like Boston that has put small area FMRs in place that, again, better reflect the local market when it comes to the FMR. So just things that to constantly look into and explore, okay, what other tools are out there that we might be able to use smarter?
And I think with that, that's our final question. Thank you again. Please join me in giving all of the partners who joined us today a round of applause. I can reassure you that HUD New England, our state partner, CHAPA, and Two Life Communities look forward to being of support as we continue to tackle this issue. Please reach out to us if you have questions, and we'll be sure to follow up with the presentation and details that we shared today. Thank you again, and have a blessed day.